Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better.
How is it possible to transcend the egoic self? It's simple in theory, but it's usually difficult in practice. It's important to realize not only that it's simple in theory, but that all the great spiritual teachers recommend doing it. The core of all the ancient spiritual teachings was to transcend the limitations of the ego and its belief systems, end quote. Truth versus Falsehood by David R. Hawkins, M.D., Ph.D. How? The primary way to do it is by mastering some meditative practice or other. Everyone who meditates sufficiently drops personalizing and identifying with the content of awareness in favor of identifying with its context, namely the witnessing consciousness itself. This is what it means to turn from focusing outward to focusing inward. Why bother? Quote, truth is a consequence not only of content but also of context. Truth supports life and falsity brings death, end quote. It doesn't just support the continuation of life, it enhances the quality of life. The more we practice well, for example, the less bothered we are by unwanted emotions, and so the happier we become. Awareness itself is never emotional. Emotions are contents of awareness. Like all contents of awareness, it's a mistake to identify with them, to take emotions to be ourselves. Doesn't that contradict what I previously said in this playlist about not rejecting emotions because they are parts of our lives? Yes, it does. However, that was a useful idea in that context. The point there was to avoid either venting unwanted emotions or trying to ignore them in favor of the middle way of fully accepting them and, in effect, loving them to death. It was a true statement in that context. Quote, a statement is true only within a specific context. There is nothing the mind believes that is not fallacious at a higher level of consciousness, end quote. Dr. Hawkins' emphasis. The truth of any thought is relative to its level of consciousness. Yes, until we detach from them, they seem to be ourselves. If I'm afraid, for example, it seems to be me who is afraid. The context here, though, is to focus on the context of the witnessing consciousness instead of on any of its content. Why? The real I is context and not content, end quote. Identifying with content, owning it, personalizing it, is not only optional but not recommended. Go inward to focusing on context instead. That's the only way to lasting emotional peace. Doing that is why prolonged emotional distress is optional. Sages don't suffer emotionally because they have stopped identifying with emotions. You and I can do the same thing. Furthermore, we don't have to be sages ourselves to emulate them in that respect. We've seen that all emotions are composed of three non-emotional parts, namely, a thought that is the apprehension of some situation taken to be real, a thought that is an egocentric judgment about that situation as being good or bad for me, and a bodily sensation. The following may shock you, but it's true. You are neither your body nor your thoughts. The body is an it that you have now, nor are your thoughts you. There's nothing personal about them. Quote, thoughts really belong to the consciousness of the world, end quote. From Power versus Force. Perhaps this is easiest to understand with respect to general truths. For example, suppose that you and I both think simultaneously that 7 plus 5 is 12. Is that my thought? Is it yours? Well, I am thinking it, and you are thinking it. What, though, is personal about it? Nothing. Does it work the same way with other thoughts? Suppose, for example, that I have a headache, and think, I have a headache. Suppose that simultaneously you are also having a headache and thinking, I have a headache. Is the thought I have a headache mine or yours? It's neither. Yes, we're each thinking it, but by itself it's just an impersonal thought, conceptualization, judgment that anyone can think. What are considered to be my thoughts are merely thoughts common to that particular energy field and are not really personal at all, end quote. From Truth versus Falsehood. So thoughts, which are just contents of awareness, are not personal. With respect to the threefold analysis of emotions, that only leaves the bodily sensations. Are they any more personal than thoughts? Well, it's true that you can't feel my bodily sensations, and vice versa. Is that, though, a logical impossibility, or only a causal impossibility? If it's only a causal impossibility, if it's only a contingent fact about how we experience, then we could feel exactly the same sensation as we can think exactly the same thought. I happen to think that would only be a violation of causal laws. Either way, like all thoughts, all bodies and their sensations are also not us. At all higher levels of consciousness, your body is experienced as an it. So are all its sensations. It's fine to be skeptical, questioning. However, don't stop there. Investigate for yourself. 1. Become a sage, and you'll discover that you no longer identify with your body as being you. 2. Use energy testing, videos 10 and 38 through 44, to confirm the truth of the relevant statement. 3. If you are not yet a sage and are unable to use energy testing, at least ask any sage to confirm that disidentification. Emotions are not personal. There's nothing binding you to unwanted emotions. Whenever you suffer from one, detach from it. Simply use either the emotional humility method, video 15, the peacefulness process method, video 16, some similar method, or just drop it. In the next video, let's connect happiness to this discussion. Let's end emotional distress.